Maharaja was an Indian king. And his father, Siddhartha Gautama's father, was presided over a kingdom, and he made all the laws for the kingdom, and he hoped that his son would succeed him as king when he, the father, the Maharaja, died. And back in those days, that's the way things worked. If your father was the king or the Maharaja or the prince, you became his successor, the new Maharaja. Maharaja means king, it also means prince. So Buddha was grew up in the palace, and he lived in luxury. He had anything he wanted, all the possessions he wanted. It was a life of pleasure and happiness and contentment. Nothing ever went wrong. But Buddha was not completely satisfied. He was a little bored, and he wondered about what was going on outside the palace. So one day, he sneaked out to travel the world and to see what others were doing, to see what life was like. And he experienced something that is called in Buddhism the four sights. The four sights. First, he saw a sick man. He'd never seen sickness in the palace before. Nobody had ever gotten sick. Then he saw an old man, and he'd never seen an old man in the palace before. The older people in the palace had been pretty much sent to rooms where nobody ever saw them. And then finally he saw a dead man. He'd never seen someone ever die in the palace. The sick man, the old man, and the dead man symbolized to Buddhists and to the original Siddhartha Gautama suffering. And the final sight that he saw a monk that he decided Siddhartha Gautama, would follow and try to learn something from that monk. And so for about 5 years, he followed that monk around. He learned as much as he could from that monk, and decided after the 5 years that he learned all that he could, and so he was going to go off on his own. And he left the monk, he bid the monk farewell, and he went into the woods to sit under a tree. And while sitting under that tree, a famous tree in India known as the Bo tree, while he was sitting there, he realized the meaning of life. He came to the conclusion that life was about suffering, but it was possible to overcome suffering. And for the rest of his life, he walked around teaching that meaning of suffering and how to overcome suffering. And he taught hundreds and thousands of people during his 40-year teaching. Now I'm going to show you what the Buddha looked like, and